Yo, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Sedrick, as you know, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And guys, I'm telling you, if you did not catch last week's episode where I sat down with my daughter and we talked about the process of letting each other into our hearts and into our lives, as we brought her into our family through adoption and her brother. And I'm telling you, it was a phenomenal discussion. So I really invite you to go check out last week's episode. And I'm sure there's something in there that's going to impact you and your family's life. But I'm super excited. There's a gentleman that I have as my guest today. He's been a long time in my circle, and we've kind of rubbed shoulders. We've talked over the years, but we haven't really connected. And he and I had a phenomenal discussion about a week or two ago. And I'm like, you know what? Let's have a conversation. So please meet my guest, Rigo Santana. He's an amazing guy. So how you doing today, Rigo?
I'm doing great. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for bringing me on board and letting me participate in your podcast. Like I said, it's an honor to be here. And I mean, just like you said, just 2 weeks ago, here we are at SEMA, and one of the biggest events in the country. And we got into a slash beyond detailing conversation that had to do with being a dad, right? And the hardships and all the struggles that you come across, as a man. And the conversation got intense. We almost forgot we were at SEMA for a bit, right?
Yeah, and I like those conversations, right? It's like SEMA is always for those of you that are not auto guys or auto gals. SEMA is the largest automotive aftermarket show in the world. That's in Vegas every year, and detailers and automotive pros gather from all over the world. And Rigo and I were at the Sonax booth, and we just started having a conversation. And like you
Right.
said, it kind of like we forgot all about the auto stuff, and it was just two men having a heart to heart. It was just a really, really great conversation. So,
And I think that's really reconnected because we did what so many men cliche say it's not cool to do, connect as men, as human beings. Another human heart to heart, which I think in society we forgot to do, and they kind of put this jacket on us men that men don't cry and men are tough and this and that. And wow, let me tell you, man, and just 2 years back, I mean, like I had mentioned to you, I went through a separation, and everything, all my fundamentals and everything that I taught that came with being a man and had molded me to be the dad that I have become was totally on a whole different perspective, right?
mm,
And here at the moment, like you mentioned, one thing that tied us, me and you together, is the automotive industry. But here I was a successful, should I say, entrepreneur outside of my household, but inside my household, I was a failure. And I
mm,
mean a failure because, I didn't have the proper tools as a man to know how to be a dad. And who does, right? It's not like you're born and they give you a manual and they tell you, hey, here, this is the way you're supposed to be a good dad, and this is the way you're supposed to be a good husband. And at the time of my separation, it set off something within myself that made me go on this journey because I was like, how can I be such a success and help so many people around the world and everything else with their business, but inside my own home, what I consider my golden shelter, it fell apart on me. And and I started to try to look into it because like anything, when you're in a relationship, it's easy to blame, but it doesn't work like that. In reality, it takes both parties. And you got to stop and look at yourself and start asking, okay, where did I go wrong? Okay, what did I do wrong? And that's where the journey began for me, buddy. And let me tell you, wow.
So let's talk about that, because I think there are a lot of men that are listening to this podcast or who have gone through a similar situation where they've been a very successful entrepreneur in their business circles. Man, they're getting the high fives, they got mad respect, and then they come home and things are not aligning, right? It's like, how come I'm not getting the respect from my wife? How come my kids aren't respecting me? So as you kind of got to that point, what helps you go, all right, there's something more important that's missing?
You
And
know,
how did you
oh,
kind of build out of that?
you know what? In regards to that, let me tell you. Like you said, here I was a kid because first of all, I come from real rough background, and my background and my culture is a Hispanic culture. So we're gonna try to put this puzzle together to make other people understand and kind of see if we could help other men. In my culture, there's this big machismo thing, right? Like, Hispanic men's rule and we're tough and the woman doesn't go above you. Strike number one, right? And then if you lose control, you're not a man no more. Strike number two. And then, here, if society knows anything about either of two of the above, you're really in trouble. Strike three, you're out. So here, I was working, and in my mind, I was programmed to think that if you work hard and you dedicate yourself to work and you come home, you're a good dad. But everything else in between, they forgot to fulfill those spots for me. That, as a man, it's all right to cry. That as a man, you don't just rule in your house, you're a partner. That as a man, that it's a right to hear your wife and hear her out when she needs to hear you out versus becoming the fixer. Because us men, we think we know how to fix everything. Your wife won't even finish telling you something, and you already think you got the solution. Oh, this is broken. Oh, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll fix it. They don't want to hear that, dude. But somewhere in the midst of us men, we get programmed like that, right? So here I was working my butt off, so-called me thinking. So now I'm traveling. Now here I'm a man, a kid. Well, I'm a man now, but a kid that came from South Central LA with no education, traveling the world now, going across countries, helping other people be successful. And like you said, here on my way back home, I was coming to my home and I was turning the key, but I was turning the key to my worstest nightmare.
Hmm.
Here I had two, here I had two lovely daughters, and I had a, young, beautiful wife, but the monster was in the house. The monster was within myself. Why? Because I, as a man, had been carrying traumas from my childhood that I carried into my manhood that nobody likes to talk about. So, like, this journey took me on a real deep journey of searching and healing. So as my marriage fell apart, I would sit there. I swear to God, brother, I would sit there at moments when things were at all time high, and I'm like thinking, wow, what am I doing wrong, dude? Like, I just went to work for a whole week, came back, everything's good, but I'm arguing with the person that gave me two beautiful children. What am I doing wrong? How can I fix it? But how could I have fixed it? I couldn't. Why? Because I didn't even have the tools to begin with. And then the other big thing is this conversation me and you were having, I would have never even dared thought to think to have it. Why? Because how could Rigo tell somebody publicly that as a human he failed? No,
Hmm.
that wasn't gonna happen. Not to Mr. Man, not to the household that controls everything, not to the public figure that when he goes out in public, everybody's looking for answers for your occupation. But the most important thing that I didn't have is how to be a good human and a good man.
Yeah.
You know,
So let's talk about that, because you said a couple things there that I think is really really key. One, figuring out how to tame the monster, right? Because
right?
sometimes we are the monster in our home. We're dominating, we're intimidating. Even our presence sometimes can be intimidating. We don't even have to say anything, right? So one, how did you tame the monster? And two, you talked about finding the tools to be a better dad. And I imagine those tools were what helped you tame the monster.
Well, let's touch on that one because we got some lengthy answers to that one. So remember, like I told you, I come from a Hispanic culture, right? So since I was born, Catholicism was put on me, or and there's nothing wrong with any religion. It all
Yeah.
leads to good, right? But in my Catholic religion, it was almost like, you get baptized, first confirmation, you get married, you have kids, and it's game over, right? But my mom did her best, but you know, to me, church was just going on a Sunday, saying the prayers and leaving, and you're gone. I didn't have a personal connection with God, one, at the moment. So as my relationship started falling apart, I was trying to search and search, and everywhere I searched to, unfortunately, nobody had an answer for me. Why? Because one, in my culture, nobody wants to talk about it. The
Mm.
man, the Hispanic man, nobody's. You could walk into somebody's marriage and they could be throwing pots, breaking glass, throwing the kitchen out the window, and their marriage is still perfect. Nobody wants to accept it, right? So I didn't have no support there. I remember going talking to two pastors, two fathers, Catholic pastors. They sat me down and told me what happened. I go, man, I feel like a piece of, you know, garbage. I don't feel like living anymore. I feel like taking my own life. And this is the first time I publicly said this, to tell you the truth, on the podcast. But I was at that point. And then the pastor was sitting there looking at me and he said, you know what? Say 10 Hail Marys, go home and give it to God. And I'm looking at him. I'm like, is that all I have to do? Wow. Well, let me tell you, I came home, I prayed 20, and it still didn't do me no good, right? So then I was like, what's going on? What's happening in my head? Why are my feelings are so all over the place? I've survived South Central. I've survived gun battles. I've survived. I mean, if I could go down the list, brother, you'd be like, wow. So I'm thinking, how is it possible that now that I lost my family, I'm feeling worse than anything I ever felt in life? So then I started looking and asking people. It was so hard for me. Why? Because I'm a machismo. Men don't cry. Men don't ask for help. And if you do, it's gonna you ever anybody that I ask, it's like, oh, you're gonna be all right, Rigo. Just hang in there, brother. It's gonna be all right. Guess what? It wasn't all right. So then I said, something. You know what? I need to do something different. So I did what I was so hard for me to do. I went to look for help. So this is where my journey starts now. I go with a psychologist, and psychologists are like doctors. Not all of them function the same, and I learned that real quick. And I'm not knocking them. Psychologists do their job. There's different levels to pain and hurt, right? So psychologists, some will hear you out, some will give you answers. There's different strokes for different folks. But even in the psychologist, I realized that it wasn't really digging into me. So then my hurt kept on going, and my depression wasn't going nowhere, and I still had a function. Take it. I'm a man. His family's has fell apart. I'm at an all-time high in my career, but I'm a complete failure outside of the industry. In my head, I'm like, how did I destroy my family? What didn't I see? So from there, people are like, you know what? 6 months, 8 months go by, and I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And then they're like, oh, you probably need to go to a psychiatrist. So I go talk to a psychiatrist, and he's like, oh, you know what? Let me put you on medication. Medication? I'm not crazy. I'm hurting. Like I know I'm hurting. Like I miss my wife. I miss my kids. Well, you're talking about taking your life. Yeah, because I feel like there's nothing wrong. Here, take this medication. I'm not gonna lie. I popped the pill one time. That was the last time I popped it. I said, you know what? I popped it, and I started. God, I still remember. I was in the second floor a house, and I started hearing these noises down on the first floor. Man, I said, this ain't for me, man. I'm not crazy. I'm hurt. So strike number two. So I kept on searching for help. And I realized, and I don't know if you agree with me, maybe now there's a little bit more, but men don't have that support. I don't know if because if society has it set up to where like men don't fail, men don't cry, men don't think about depression or don't feel hurt behind a separation, there isn't. So then I went a little further and I found a therapy group, dude, right? And in this therapy group, key and behold, this is the first time that's when it's like the second time I had heard about childhood traumas. I'm like, what is that? Oh man, brother, let me tell you. Once I started digging into my past and I started looking into who Rigo had become as a man and where the root of the problem was at for me, regardless of whatever my ex-wife did, because like I said, it takes two, right? But we're talking about what Rigo did, taking responsibility for what I did as a man. I didn't like it. Oh man. But then as I stood there and I started connecting a lot of things that they were saying in these group therapies and stuff like that, I said, I gotta stay here. And that's when I got confronted with that monster that's in me. And when I mean that monster, because that monster is called ego, that we
Mm.
all of us men have, but nobody talks about it, right? That ego is very, very deadly. There's good ego, but there's bad ego, and there's more bad ego than anything, you know. So when I found out what ego was, the battle began. So that's what drove me to look for help. I lost my family, and I hit my knees, brother. I hit my knees, and like I tell people, a lot of times the only way you're able to search for me for that higher power is when you hit your knees. You're forced to look up, and that's what happened to me. And here I
Yeah.
am.
And that's so powerful, right? I think and you have a strong emphasis on coming at it from the Hispanic machismo kind of cultural aspect. And in my experience with talking to other men, that is almost universal across African American, across white American, across Hispanic, but there is, because I used to work at a Spanish radio station, and there really is a strong machismo, right? And so I understand on a very personal level what you're talking about. But I think that same idea ripples across men across many cultures, where we are less of a man if we admit that we don't have our home taken care of. We are less of a man if our wife is not enamored with us and we're not enamored with, and our home is chaos. We never want to admit that we don't have that together, right? Because it's that ego thing, right? Oh, dude, I'm a successful businessman, but I'm not even going to admit that I have troubles in my home.
Right.
That me and my wife, we can't even talk. We haven't been intimate together for 9 months, right? Or whatever. I've heard so many stories, right? And and when you can go, all right, as a man, it's like, look, there are things that I have buried and pushed down in my life that happened to me when I was a kid, and I've been compensating and overdriving to cover up that loss, that pain, that abuse, that whatever happened, right? And it's like we never want to face it. And until we get to that point, and some of us have to get to the point where we've lost everything. We've lost our family, we've lost our job. Sometimes they become so strained and you think you're going to lose it. And I've talked to many guys lately that they feel like they're on the edge of losing it. And even when you have a good relationship, right, you're still, there come about situations where you can still, your ego can get in the way. And if you don't take an honest look at yourself and go, man, I am being a brute, I'm being demanding. What do I need to do in my life to become a gentler, kinder, more loving man, not only in my home, but also with men around me, right? Because it's ironic that you found a psychiatrist group, and for years, there's no way you would have done that. But when you
You know,
finally said, I'm going to shed my pride and I'm going to go find the answers, and you were in a safe space of like-minded, like experienced men that were trying to heal, you were able to go, all right, I got to look at me.
You know what? In regards to that, brother, I could connect with you so much. Like right now, like I said, there's our occupation industry connects us, right? And because of that, you'd be surprised how many, and I would say big guys in the industry are falling apart behind the scenes. But because I've been so vocal now about what happened to me, because they're like, when people look at me or you look at me, they're like, I look kind of rough in my edges. Unfortunately, I don't look that fragile, right? So they're like, what happened to you, Rigo? What are you going through? I'm vocal about it. Yo, dude, I'm in therapy, lost my family, you know what? I'm going through this. Yeah, I did try to take my life. They're like, Rigo? Nah, you're kidding me now, bro. And they'll start open. Hey, well, you know what? This is the problem. I'm like, oh, you know what, man? There's options. And they're black, they're white, they're Hispanic like me. And I was using Hispanic because I was referring to myself, but you're right, Joe. The there's when you're talking about men in general right now, we are in a society where men are falling apart and literally falling apart, but nobody's speaking about it because it's a cliche or not to talk about it or not to find help. And for men, like I said, I hit my knees. I hit my knees and I had to look up to try to figure out where the answer was. And even then, like I was going to therapy groups and I talked to the psychiatrist and none of it helped me. And people ask me, well, what's the answer? And I tell people, it's like a ball. It's well rounded. You need a bit of everything in order to find yourself again because it's not just one sole thing. Spiritually, I really, in my opinion, it's a real strong part of it. You need to therapy too. The need to therapy, and you need to do one thing. You need to confront your ego because all of us men, we have it. Right now, when you were
Yeah.
saying about, that even with amongst men, we don't know how to bond, and it's true because now, and maybe you know what, maybe that's what we were able to connect this year a little more because of the journey that I've gone to therapy, right?
Yeah.
Because before I maybe a couple years back, I wouldn't have stopped to take the time to talk to you for whatever ego. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
like, but this young, nah. So with that say, I will take a man like my childhood friends. Just within the last year, I remember I told them, man, I love you guys. And you're talking about guys from the streets that survived gunfire and everything else, and they're not used to hearing that from another man, right? And the first time I'm not gonna lie, they looked at me like, Rigo, are you like turning on us or something? Like, and I'm like, nah, bro, like I love you, and they realize that Rigo is trying, it wants to change, right? And
And
it's
I
hard.
think it starts. I sorry, I interrupted you. I think it starts with men like you and men like me being willing to embrace the emotions that are human,
Right,
right? It is human to love. It's human to be sensitive. It's human to be kind. It's also human to have an ego and be bold and you know in your face, right? But
right.
we as men haven't been taught from a young age how to deal with the very natural emotions of hurt, of loss, of sorrow, of having our feelings hurt and being pushed aside. We tend to push those out of the way and put on the mask that everything's okay. But inside, we're a hurricane of emotions because we haven't
Oh
been
man,
taught how
you
to
know
deal
what?
with it.
To what you said right now, let me reinforce what you said. We're a hurricane of emotions, and I'm gonna make a good point on this. I was born and raised in South Central, and I was losing friends every 6 months. I was going. I remember it was a 6 month period where we were just burying them back to back. You know what? And you would figure, oh, I express my emotions because I lost a loved one. No, we're wrong as men. We're talking about a different type of emotion connection. We're talking about the connection where you could feel for another human being, that you could actually connect with your wife, and instead of being that real tough guy that comes home and kicks the boots off and just looks at your wife because you worked your butt out working, no, before you come in the door, man, be that guy that decompresses right before you open the door, and when you walk through the door, you make your wife feel like you are a pillar. But you know what? You're a good pillar. You're the pillar that she could decompress on you and she could relieve all her pain on you. And then you could get that. And then if she wants your opinion, you could give it to her. And if not, you digest it the other way. Then when you come home, instead of being the tired, my back hurts type of dad, you could actually grab your kid and put him on your back and play horsey. But those are all the emotions and those are all the things that they don't teach us as men when we're small. And as we get bigger, we get this concept of men that this is the way things are supposed to be done. And they're wrong. And then the one thing that we love the most, that we quote unquote took care of with all our heart, we destroyed, which is what? Our families. You don't have to hit somebody sometimes. I was like, I got friends right now too that are going through a situation that they're like, Rigo, man, I go, listen, this is going wrong with my marriage. I'm like, well, what did he do? Well, I go, did he communicate? Nah, bro, I didn't want to. Bro, right there, that's where it began. You know, the minute you stop being the communicator and that should I say that comfort zone for your wife, well, guess what? She's starting to look for that comfort zone somewhere else. Whether it's
Yeah.
with her mother, whether it's with the ex, whether it's with the friend that just got divorced and is not telling her. Well, guess what? My husband did the same thing. Get rid of him. And the next thing you know, the storm begins. So
Mm.
as men, everything we're taught, and I'm not saying all of us are raised the same, but the ones that unfortunately aren't embedded with that warmth, how to teach a woman, or no, not to teach, but how to be a good partner to your wife. Take some time, man. Read some books. You know, um, Me myself, I'm not a really religious type of dude. Don't get me wrong. I have gotten closer to God. I really have. I bound on a personal level. I've gotten a more personal relationship with Him, which I feel has helped me endure this because I'm still healing. Don't think I'm out of the storm yet. But I remember in the Bible it says that you're supposed to take care of your wife as if it's a temple of God, right? I said, man, those words, I mean, they stuck in my head. I said, I wish those words would have been said to me when I was a kid, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And now I'm taking it all in to learn how to heal Regal because it's tough, man. Even after you accept that your ego did a lot of damage, now you have to move forward with this new you at 40
Yeah.
something years old. And
Yeah.
wow, teach an old dog new tricks. That's a whole different battle.
Yeah. I think a lot of times too, we as men, we look at where we are and we look at everything that's brought us to this point and we start to live in regret, right? Instead of going, all right, I made these mistakes. I built these. I was good in this area and it brought me to this point. And maybe I'm not exactly happy where I am today, but I need to own where I am today. And I can use today as a foundation to move forward to become the man that I want. And I think a lot of times we as men, especially if you really think about it, I'm not sure where this happens, but when you first started dating your wife, dude, you were patient, you were considerate, you would stay on the phone till 3 a.m. in the morning and she'd be talking and you just be listening, right? And you wouldn't be worried about, oh, I got to get up at 6 a.m. You would be giving her that time. And somewhere, once we get married and we get engrossed in building life and building careers, we lose that attention to our lady. And
You
that's
know,
what they're missing. That's what they're yearning for. They're like, what happened to the man that I fell in love with? This man, yes, he's still driven, but he's not driven for me anymore.
You know what? Right now, man, you took me down memory lane because it was said to me. The person that you marry is not the person you end up with, and it's true because you're starting a relationship and like you said, you're all into her, right? And she's all into you. But you have to ask yourself as a man, where did the road turn that you got disconnected from her? Where did the road turn that those long three o'clock in the morning conversations were starting to bother you when you would come home. It's because you got so focused on yourself and your ego took over you that it's like, you forget on priorities. A simple, you know what? I mean, like I said, it wasn't just my fault, but there's things that if I could go back, I would go back and I would rewind them because there was times I could have came home and could have just been a lending ear. But instead, I would be like, again, like just leave your job, you know? And that wasn't what she wanted to hear. All she wanted to hear was me here around decompress. And then on top of everything else that piled up. And then the most hard thing that we deal with is the acceptance that we're wrong. Oh no, we're not gonna
Mhm.
accept it because when you're in the marriage and you're like years into it, then you get this program in your head that that you're the man. It's your household. You're ruling. We're gonna build something, and the next thing you know, instead of asking for an opinion if you should put an add on to the house or do something to the front yard, you're just doing it now. Versus before, like you said, just asking her, hey, what do you think about this? Just asking her, simple thing like that would have fulfilled her because why? You make her feel a part of that vision because women get with us for one reason, because we make them a part of our dream, our vision. And once we exclude them from that dream or that vision, trust and believe, they'll let you know real quick there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So, I've learned that a lot now. I've learned that hearing and appreciating somebody, not just materialistic wise, goes a very, very long way.
Yeah. No, man, what I really appreciate your just being open and candid and having such a great dialogue because I think this dialogue's important for me and you, for other men, right? And we don't do as good a job as we should of creating these kinds of spaces amongst our close brothers. So let me ask you a final question, kind of in wrap up. You know, what are one or two things that you think, especially looking back and as you're building out of, the last 2 years, what are one or two things that you think really, really are critical for men to implement in their life to create a good family environment?
One of them to build a you know what? Let me take this back. What they need to do is find a support group outside of telling their wives or any as men. They have to invest in themselves. And when I mean invest in themselves, I don't mean go buy brand new Louis Vuitton shoes or go buy a new truck. No, I'm talking about go find and let me tell you, gentlemen, because there's a lot of guys that might be like, oh, financially I can't do it. Well, there's therapy groups out there that will help you without you having to invest a penny. That's why I'm so vocal about what happened to me now, brother, because and I was willing to do this podcast with you because I said that if I survived this after everything that I went through, that I was gonna do my best to give something back in return to the man that didn't have the tools. So I could help him find the tools. And there's therapy groups out there. What would help them reinforce that happy family home? Go make time. It's just make an hour. And it's the best investment you could do in you as a man because at the end of the day, the ones that reap the most out of this is your children. Because a lot of us are carrying generational trauma without us even knowing, right?
Yeah,
And there has to be somebody in the family that has to be the one, like Ed Mallett said. It should be the one. And it has to and if it's you, that'd be the best investment I could tell a man that he could do to invest in his family.
I love that. Be the one that changes the generational path.
Yes.
Be the
And
one. So.
once you're the one too, before we sign off, like I told you this morning, I went to church. Why do I go to church? Because even though I feel I'm in a little better place, the healing has to stop. I still have my setbacks. I wake up in the mornings and I still struggle with the fact that guess what? I don't have my family. And it hurts as a man. But like you said, I'm trying to learn from everything that went wrong so I could be a better me today because I want to be the one and the last one to live this again.
I love that, brother. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. And this is my friend Rigo Santana. You can find him out on Facebook. He's kind of everywhere. He's an ambassador for SB3 ceramic coating. He has his own detail shop. He's a detail trainer. He travels the world, like you said. He has such a big impact on so many people's lives. And, I know that your story, this personal story, is going to impact some men that really need to know that, they're not alone, that
Yes.
there are men going through similar situations. And if we can open our hearts and create a safe space, man, we can really impact not only ourselves, but also our families. So thank you so much for being my guest, my brother.
And
And
thank you for bringing me on board. And like you said, any man out there, any brother that is going through anything, reach out to either of us.
yep,
I'm open to help you out because sometimes publicly you won't do it. So if you guys want to private message me, I'll guide you the best way I can.
that's right. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. Please remember, those that are tuning in, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And, we're just a couple weeks away from Christmas. So I hope you have a very Merry Christmas and you have a great time. So thank you so much, brother. And we
Thank
will
you.
check you guys same time, same bad channel, just next week, right here on Father's Fire. See ya.